So there are 360 degrees of the zodiac, for each one there being a Sabian symbol. For me, the Elven Star is one way of selecting 7 of those points for me to study in depth, which help me understand who I am. But the other 353 are also available to me. And if I rotate the Elven Star from its point of origin from my sun sign to, for example, one of my other planets, or any one of the other 353, I will get a different set of 7. So I can see this being a lifetime's work here. Even just understanding the first 7 is a lifetime's work. So for you, James, what is the relationship between the Elven Star and Sabian Symbols?
There is, of course, a deep relationship between the Sabian Symbols studies and the Elven Star. And yet, we have to consider, in essence, what the Elven Star is to understand this question. The Elven Star existed before I came upon it, of course, and it simply means a 7-pointed star, and it's been picked up by certain types of people for their purposes, and they're also calling it the fairy star. So that gives you a clue as to the kind of people that tune in to the number 7. So the Elven Star as a sigil, as a design, a magical design, simply indicates 2 things, really. First of all, it's a star, and therefore has points, and is not enclosing something, it's enclosed by something. So you could fit a star within a circle or the polygon if it's sort of drawn as an equal-sided star, which usually it is. So a star, and in this case the Elven Star, is an indicator of 7-pointedness for our Elven Star. And we have therefore to consider 7 as the fundamental mystery of the Elven Star. And so we can study the number 7 in all manner of different ways. It would be obvious to give it a color coding because we associate 7 colors with the rainbow. So we could look at that. We could also look at the fact that the name Elven Star gives us a clue as to what is the atmosphere of the meaning behind the sigil. And that atmosphere is the same as the atmosphere we pick up, we feel, we identify with when we consider elves. And elves were generally not much understood in our modern culture until the film Lord of the Rings, which became very impactful on our modern mythology. And this shows you what elves mean to us. They're of this world in a sense, in the sense that they're physical beings, and yet they're above most of it. You know, they fly like fairies almost when they walk, and they eat in a vegan sense, and they don't die unless there's some catastrophic event that kills them off. They just don't die off. And so we're talking about that level of human attainment, which is only afforded in our mythology to beings like Buddha and Christ. But in fact, not even Buddha. Christ was the only being that was recorded in history not to have died. And so we're talking about the ultimate kind of expression of human attainment in the elf kingdom. They're magical, they're mystical, they can do things that normally humans can't do. And this represents an aspect of who we are, potentially. It's an idealization of something that's actually proved by Christ to have been attainable, at least by one person. That was the whole thing. He could walk on water and do miracles and not die. I mean, so can we, theoretically. That's the teachings within Christianity. And that's the teachings within Elven consciousness too. When you get into that state of being where you can handle everything all that's going on, all of the 7 dimensions of reality, then yeah, you're there. You can walk on water, presumably. You're really there. So 7 is coming up again and again. What is 7 about? And I don't think we know. I really don't think we know much about it. We got some clues. So Elven Star is the device by which we focus our attention on the number 7, and we study 7-ness, and we look at 7 chakras, and we look at 7 planes of consciousness in Sufism, and we look at the 7-word system, and we look at other systems of 7, so that we can just feel what's going on when 7 is studied. How does that change our consciousness, our feelings, our awareness? That effect upon us is the magic of 7. Now, we're all touched by the number 7. In the Western world, it's the lucky number, and it's given to the numbers of days of the week and the colours of the rainbow and so on. We're very deeply touched by the number 7. And some people would argue that we were given 7 days of the week because there are 7 moving lights in the sky. Well, it's not really true, because there are 8. Even though very, very rarely you can see Uranus, it's nevertheless possible. And equally, it's not likely that you see Mercury either. So those 2 planets are both visible to the human eye, and that makes 8, not 7. Whereas 7 would have been what people saw in the olden days more often than 8, because Uranus was really unlikely to be noticed as a planet. It was so small. Whereas Mercury is obviously a planet. So presumably the number 7 comes from the moving lights in the sky, and that's what gives us 7 days of the week. But it's false. It's a contrivance that the human mind has come up with to say, look, 7, study 7, 7, get it, 7-ness, you know. And that's what we're doing with the Elven Star. So to come to the question, how does that link with Sabian Symbols? And the answer comes in the study of septiles in astrology. It's very unusual indeed for an astrologer to look for septiles. They would very, very rarely indeed look for quintiles even, but septiles almost never. They're very difficult to calculate. And in the olden days, before computers, you couldn't do it. Unless you were a genius mathematician, you couldn't do it. So now it's possible, it's being looked at, which is interesting. Now is the time. Without computers, we couldn't do it. Now we can. And who has done that? Well, nobody. Nobody's really studied septiles to any level. So we can study septiles, and that's because of the Sabian symbols. You can't meaningfully study septiles without some determination between this degree and that degree. And astrology generally doesn't give us that. It gives us zodiac signs, just a 12th of the circle. But a 360th of the circle, offered by Sabian symbols, gives us a meaningful way of studying all horoscopes in great depth. And in this case, we're using the Sabian symbols to study the number 7. So in a sense then, we're actually studying the number 7, awakened in our consciousness through the sigil Elven Star, and explained in many different systems of 7, including astrology, which is studying the septiles using Sabian symbols. That's how I would see the relationship between those 2 studies on Sabian Mysteries website.